watching BloombergQuint as we come to you from the World Economic Forum's annual meeting here in Davos. I have with me Ahmad Al Redha, the COO of Emirates, and we're going to talk about the aviation industry, the operating environment and growth opportunities in this year and the years to come of this new decade. So thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you what you make of the aviation market right now, given that there is some concern about global growth. Do you expect that 2020 will be slightly muted growth because of the trade tensions, slower growth and those issues, or do you expect to continue to do as well?
I think what we have seen, the early indication in getting into 2020 is quite positive globally. We see is that the economic is trending positively. We're seeing a good trend and demand on traffic movement all over, whether from the Middle East, the regional, and going to Europe and United States. So there is a positive trend in there. We see there is a good appetite for financial market to come and support the any activities we're looking for. So I think it is, unless there is some geopolitical unrest that may happen, we see is quite a positive year we expect to see from all aspects.
And within the region, because of the recent tensions, have you seen any kind of impact on the aviation industry?
I mean, so far we haven't seen that. In fact, at the beginning of the year, we thought there might be some kind of impact on what has happened so far. But really, to our surprise, is everything went quite well. We didn't see any drop in traffic. We have seen, in fact, a healthy December and January seat factor, average seat factor we have seen in excess of 80% across the network. So it's quite been very good positive the last 2 months, and it doesn't seem to have been impacted by any of this escalation that we have seen it over the last couple of weeks.
Okay. One of the other challenges I think your airline and maybe some other airlines has also been facing is to do with delivery of aircraft, specifically with Airbus and fleet management, and therefore the ability to grow the fleet. Can you talk us through what the last year has been like and how your plans for the decade are unfolding?
I think there is no doubt as our plan has been slightly impacted, but with the late delivery of the B777X, we were supposed to start taking delivery of this aircraft from mid-2020. But due to some difficulty within the test program of that aircraft, now we will not be able to take delivery of this aircraft in 2020, and that means we have to do some kind of adjustment to our phase-out of aircraft that was supposed to be phased out during this year in relation to the B777ER. And the same thing with the A380. We have taken delivery of 118 or 115 aircraft so far, and there are 8 more aircraft to be delivered by this year and next year. That will complete our aircraft delivery of A380 of 123 aircraft. So I think the A380 has not been so far impacting us. Looking in the future, as you may have heard or have noted, that we have announced the purchase of a different type of aircraft, mid-type of aircraft range of the A350-900 and the 787-9. These type of aircraft obviously will give us a smaller capacity and will allow us to penetrate to various markets and able to go at a different frequency. These aircraft will range, I think, between like about 8 to 10 hours, and the capacity will give us something between 290 to 310 seater. Is an ideal type of aircraft for us to penetrate various markets, and especially to pilot or enter a new market maybe with more frequency comparing to the current type of aircraft which have got a higher capacity.
And what would these new markets be, including maybe some of the existing markets that you serve, like India, where you might be looking to ramp up growth?
I think that's one of the markets we'll be looking at, but there is other market in Africa we'll be looking at, in the Middle East, we're looking at in Europe. So quite a lot, because as I said, the range of this aircraft goes up to 8 hours and 9 hours, and that is ideal for the various markets around us to go through.
Okay. I do want to ask you about the India opportunity. I know that you have a very large service to India, but you all have also been keen to be able to grow it. What are the prospects looking like?
I think it is our commercial colleagues are quite very much looking forward to dealing with the traffic in the market. India has been always a very strong market to us, and has been always as a feeder to many of our destinations. So I think there is the prospect of more destination will be quite positive. But as you know, there is a bilateral agreement there, and there is a capacity on that we have to overcome. But India as an overall market has got the greatest potential for not only Emirates and all the other operators in and out of India.
I'm going to ask you a strategic question then about India, and I think you were anticipating that question. Are you looking at maybe, participating in the divestment of Air India in India to be able to get a stronger foothold in the local domestic market? Does that fit in with your broader strategic growth plans?
I mean, as an investment within India, there's quite a lot of trade rules and difficulties to really stabilize and enter into any market within India. So as far as an investment in India, there is something that nothing yet on the table immediately. But as I said, India has got quite a lot of perspective and different range in aviation or any other areas.
It's interesting. One of your competitors, Etihad, had a difficult experience with Jet Airways in India. And the other one, Qatar, has been now publicly talking about wanting to invest in Indigo Airlines, if Indigo was at all interested in that. And the other airline that's available for sale, as the government has expressly mentioned, is Air India, which is why I thought, is there any opportunity for a player like yours who wants to increase the India presence beyond just the seat sharing limitations, to be able to participate in a local carrier, so to speak, and not just a local carrier, an international carrier like Air India as well?
I mean, there's no one will ever say no to any investment, and I think every opportunity will have to be reviewed and examined in the merit of what it brings to the company, to the country, and to the city. In fact, the other operators and the other airline may look at things differently, but definitely, as I said, India is a great big market, and really it offers quite a lot of opportunity, but there is boundaries that we need to really overcome to perform more within India.
So you didn't say yes or no to Air India for me.
To Air India, I could be.
Will you be participating, because the government is doing expressions of interest?
No, I mean at this stage there is no direction from the company to participate.
Okay, but depending on what the next few opportunities open up, you will be looking at India actively.
There all will be, but as far as this specific acquisition, it is no.
Mr. Al Redha, thank you so much for your time here in Davos. Thank you for speaking to BloombergQuint.
Good to meet you. Thank you very much.
And joining me now is Adnan Kazim, the Chief Commercial Officer of Emirates, to talk us through, what the revenue opportunities for aviation will be like in this new decade and the new growth markets as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you how difficult you think the operating environment currently is for aviation, including for your airline, and where do you see both the revenue and growth opportunities in this new decade?
I mean, I think industry is going through a growth. There is a growth pattern of 3.5%. which was declared by IATA, and there is in profitability. I think all airlines are making money. It's a 20.9 billion, I think, profit being announced in 2019. Next year is forecast to be 25.5 billion profit in dollar. So it showed that this industry is going through a growth, even though there is some kind of hiccup here and there in terms of geopolitical uncertainty on the currency, and a lot of this kind of uncertainty maybe is slowing down. But overall, I think we're seeing that the industry is going through a pattern of more optimism, I think, in terms of the growth, and airlines are growing. As far as EK is concerned, or Emirates, we're riding the same sort of boat. We're quite optimistic about the future. That's why we went through a major order of the aircraft that we have in place today, which we're seeing the coming 10 years would be will be modeled around this growth pattern and adding more capacity.
Okay, we're at the beginning of a new decade. What do you expect will be the major trends in aviation? I know one of the things that is being discussed here in Davos is how to make all transportation industries more climate friendly. That might be one way of looking at it, but some of the other commercial trends that you think will unfold in this decade.
Well, I mean, there is a pattern which is coming quite, I think, strongly from mainly driven by European, I think, industry in terms of how to make this industry more climate free, more imposing some sort of carbon taxes. I think these are things that's happening. I think we'll see if that will come in and impact the pattern. But as far as the industry is concerned, I think these are part of the ongoing challenges,
sure.
whether it's to do with the diseases, I think, that we're seeing happening from the China side
right now, yes.
right now, and what's happening from the carbon taxes, and the climate side, I think, which is taking, I think, its pattern as well, I think. But overall, I think the industry will continue because we're seeing that in terms of aviation and airline is a core, I think, for people transportation from one point to another.
Of course.
And that people will still, I think, will be a key form of, I think, transportation in the future. I think would be through the aviation and airline, I think.
Do you see consolidation playing out in this decade?
It's happening, I think. We're seeing in many markets, I think, this consolidation is going on. But whether the consolidation is good, sometimes maybe it's good to maybe bring the capacity alignment to the level, I think, that it requires. Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe too much capacity out in the market creates some kind of uncertainty in terms of the yield, in terms of how many. I think there is a limitation where I think the seat can be offered in many markets. Sure. So I think it brings that alignment, I think. So consolidation, it's something really good, I think, for the industry to happen. And we're seeing that again happening quite often in Europe, I think. Many of these kind of airlines buying each other. It's not happening much in our part, I think, of the world, which is more of subcontinent and Middle East. But that's something maybe will happen in the future. It's something maybe will happen, I think, and more often, I think, in the future.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions about, Emirates' interest in India. I know you do about 172 flights to India every week.
170
yeah.
flights, yeah.
And you're obviously interested in increasing that if the bilateral agreements permit you to.
Sure.
What would be the ideal capacity you'd like to build with India? And what kind of growth market do you see India being? Given that internally right now, if we look at some of the passenger numbers, growth has been very muted. Sure. The worst numbers are out in the last 6 years, in fact, for December.
I mean, we always believe that India can offer more, I think, due to the size of the population. And I think the government of India putting a lot of emphasis through opening India to the tourists. There is an objective to bring in more tourists from the world to India. There is a heavy investment coming from Indian government in opening new airports. There is more than 100 airports will be open until 2024. Right. With all this kind of investment that's happening from the government side, we're seeing even from the relationship side from between UAE and India is moved from a bilateral sort of basic relationship to a strategic, I think, level. We have over 3 million Indians living in Dubai. We have over 12,000 employees of Indian today working with Emirates Airline. Definitely there is a huge opportunity that Emirates could add way beyond the 9 points, I think, that we serve. I mean, one of the things I think India definitely need to look at it is how to open opportunity to the regional airports in India, which allow, I think, more people to have seamless sort of pattern of traveling. And there are so many, I mean, with network that EK can bring in with 157 points, at least 85 to 90% of this network is not being covered by Indian carriers. So that's kind of a huge opportunity Emirates can bring in terms of additional tourists to India and mobilizing the passenger, I think, in much seamless way, I think, because there is a bottleneck. No matter, I think, what you do today, you cannot cover everything through Bombay and Delhi. There is a bottleneck, I think, that's going on from the core airports. And that's one thing I think India needs to look at it in terms of how to open up, I think, the regional airports, how to enhance the current capacity. Today, we're sitting at a restricted bilateral, this restriction that we live with, unfortunately, I mean, it's hitting even the Indian carriers. Today, we both are operating at almost 95 or 99% seat factor around the year. It shows when you hit an airline industry 80%, mean there is a spell happening on the traffic. So I think there is for sure, I think, a major opportunity for both, I think, side from the Dubai carrier side and from the Indian carrier to benefit more from that opening in the bilateral, and knowing what's happening around the political angle between the two countries. I think there is a room for much improvement, and I would say if we double the capacity will not be enough. I mean, that's kind of, I think, bilateral, I think that needs to be looked at. Today, honestly, India is one of these kind of, I mean, part of, I think, in terms of part of this region, part of, I think, UAE in terms of where we stand today geographically, and there should not be any restriction on the capacity, like I think what India is holding today with many countries in the world. That kind of, I think, the end game should be looked at one time to open up and go for a free sort of free flow between the two countries.
So doubling of capacity and more access to regional airports, because Bombay and Delhi can take only that much of a load.
Exactly.
Doubling of capacity will not help if you're only restricted to Bombay and Delhi. Would you like to do the India growth story on your own, or would you be interested in a partner? This is a question I put to your colleague as well.
Sure.
Is there a partnership opportunity that you might consider exploring in India?
Sure. As far as EK is concerned, or Emirates, I think we always like to work with our colleagues in the industry. It's something that we don't do it alone. Today we have just 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I was in India. We signed the agreement with SpiceJet, the code-share cooperation with Emirates and SpiceJet. That will give us and give them the access to EK network, and we get to their network sort of access. And that cooperation will go across the FFP, will be across the cargo and so many other elements of cooperation that we're trying to align. We have today an interline agreement with Vistara as well, which we're working with them on, again, on the network cooperation. So if we do this kind of access, for sure will be the benefit will coming back to the Indian carriers whom we deal with today, likes of Vistara and likes of SpiceJet.
But would you consider taking that beyond into an equity partnership of some sort? So let me rephrase this question. Your competitor Etihad had an equity interest in Jet. That has not turned out very well for them at this point in time. Qatar Airways has been speaking of wanting to buy a stake in Indigo, which is India's largest airline, and has a more than 40% market share. And then there is also Air India, which is on the block right now, and the government is committed to wanting to sell that airline, which is not just a domestic service, but an international service as well. So what model works for you? Well, the Etihad model, looking for a new player like Indigo, or Air India? Maybe we have a unique model, I think, which is... So you said no to all three? Which is linked to EK model, I think we call it. I think from day one of establishing of this company was about growing naturally through organic growth, I think, of the company, and through the partnership that we build in today. We're holding around 22 corporation with a solid partnership, plus we have 130 interline agreements with many airlines. And that strategy will remain and continue. So no equity partnership? Whether we get into any equity, I don't think that will happen. Because Jet Airways is going through insolvency proceedings right now. There are 2 buyers interested, but none of them are airline companies. So would you be interested in that, something like that? I mean, for us, because we're too busy with what we're doing, I think within Dubai, we are busy in lining up, I think, the 200 aircraft that are coming into EK, I think, and trying to deploy them in network. We're trying to map many of these kind of cooperation along with the growth of Emirates. I think it's all about, I think, time and about putting the effort from the management to different sort of entities, which sometimes we don't have that sort of, I think, spare. And I think we'd rather focusing on what we have and do it even more, strengthening our hub in Dubai. But doesn't mean that we should be doing alone. We will be working with many sort of partners in the world. Along the line, I think that we mentioned earlier that we're working with SpiceJet, we're working with Vistara, and we add value, and they're adding value to each other without being involved into the board of the management and these things, because that consumes time, that consumes a lot of effort. I think that maybe today we're more focusing on what we do and we try to do it right. Is that just a broad strategy, or is it because you've seen Etihad's experience in India, you've seen, other previous experiences in India, and you feel that it's better to stay away from equity partnerships in India? Well, sometimes I think from our angle, the time I think you enter to these kind of equities,
you tend to go away from your home comfort zone.
Okay.
I think that you have in terms of the policies, in terms of so many other things that today you have a control over it. Once you go overseas, you don't have that sort of control. And
Sure.
I think we'd rather work on something that we know, something that we have control over it, and something that we can build that sort of strategy the way we want it and mold it than
And if you got full ownership of Air India?
it doesn't
Still
work,
not.
I
Still
think,
doesn't
because
work.
you have
Because
really
a different
to work,
market, different legal
you go
structures.
through a different sort of environment that you need to work with. So I think we have taken a call from day one that we work around where we're good in it and we can do it and we can manage it in a more sort of environment that you have fully awareness about it and drive the business, I think, this way.
Mr. Kazim, thank you so much for talking us through
Thank you.
what this
Thank
decade
you.
will look like for Emirates
Sure.
and your interest in India.
Thank you very much.